Have you ever heard the story that people in the Middle Ages believed the Earth was flat? That they thought explorers like Columbus were risking their lives because at any moment their ships could fall off the edge of the world? It's a story we've been told in school books, in TV shows, and even in movies. It makes the Middle Ages sound like a time of ignorance and superstition. But what if I told you that this story itself is actually a myth? What if I told you that medieval people were a lot smarter than we give them credit for, and that the idea of a flat Earth was never really a mainstream belief at all? Let's go back in time, long before Columbus set sail. Imagine standing in ancient Greece, more than 2,000 years ago. A man named Aristotle is looking up at the sky and watching a lunar eclipse. As the moon passes into Earth's shadow, he notices something interesting. The shadow is always round. From this, he reasons that the Earth must be a sphere, not a flat disk. A few centuries later, another brilliant mind, Eratosthenes, takes things a step further. He sticks poles in the ground in two different Egyptian cities, Alexandria and Syene, and measures their shadows at the same time of day. With just a little math, he manages to estimate the size of the Earth with shocking accuracy. He was off by only a small margin compared to what we know today. All of this happened long before the Middle Ages even began. Now, fast forward to medieval Europe. You might think that knowledge like this would have been lost in time, but it wasn't. Scholars, monks, and travelers carried forward the ancient writings. In fact, most educated people in the Middle Ages already accepted that the Earth was round. They may not have known its exact size or had satellites to prove it, but the idea of a flat Earth simply wasn't dominating their worldview. Imagine a sailor in the 13th century standing at the edge of a port watching a ship disappear over the horizon. First, the bottom of the ship fades away, then the sails vanish last. To them, this was living proof of a curved world. If the Earth were flat, ships wouldn't vanish piece by piece, they'd simply shrink in size as they got farther away. Medieval sailors didn't need modern science to notice this. It was part of their everyday life. So how did the flat Earth story get tied to the Middle Ages? The surprising truth is that it didn't happen until much later, centuries later, in fact. In the 19th century, a writer named Washington Irving published a popular biography of Christopher Columbus. But Irving wasn't just writing history, he was writing a dramatic story. He imagined Columbus as a brave hero who had to fight against narrow-minded churchmen who insisted that the world was flat. It made for a powerful narrative, but it wasn't true. The real debate Columbus faced wasn't about the shape of the Earth, it was about its size. Most scholars already knew Earth was round, but they believed it was much larger than Columbus thought. Ironically, they were correct. If the Americas hadn't been in the way, Columbus's tiny fleet would have run out of food and water long before reaching Asia. The myth of the flat Earth became popular in the 1800s because it fit a certain agenda. By making the Middle Ages look ignorant, modern writers and educators could make their own time period look more enlightened, more advanced, and more rational. They called the Middle Ages the Dark Ages and painted a picture of people stumbling around in ignorance. But history is rarely that simple. The Middle Ages had their share of challenges, of course, but they also had thriving universities, scholars who preserved and expanded ancient knowledge, and scientists who laid the groundwork for the Renaissance. Think about how powerful that myth is, though. Even today, most people will casually say that medieval people thought the Earth was flat, without realizing they're repeating a story invented only a couple of centuries ago. It's an example of how myths can spread faster than facts, and how once an idea is repeated enough times, it becomes part of our cultural memory. Here's a little twist to the story. While educated Europeans didn't believe in a flat Earth, that doesn't mean nobody in history ever did. In some cultures and at some times, flat Earth ideas did exist. Ancient Norse myths imagined the Earth as a flat disk surrounded by an ocean. Some early Christian writers also debated the idea, not because of science, but because they were interpreting scripture literally. But by the Middle Ages, those debates were long gone. Scholars across Europe widely taught that Earth was a sphere, and this was basic knowledge in medieval universities. So next time you hear the phrase, people in the Middle Ages believed the Earth was flat, remember that it's not the Middle Ages being misrepresented. It's our modern retelling of history that's flawed. The real story is much more interesting. Medieval people weren't as ignorant as we think. They inherited knowledge from the Greeks and the Romans, and they added to it with their own observations. The flat Earth myth is less about what people believed back then and more about how later generations wanted to frame the past. And maybe that's the real lesson here. History isn't just about what happened, it's about the stories we tell ourselves about what happened. Sometimes those stories are exaggerated, twisted, or oversimplified to make a point, but the truth is always richer and more human. So, did people in the Middle Ages believe the Earth was flat? No, not really. The idea of a flat Earth was more of a convenient myth created much later to make the past look foolish and the present look wise. But the next time you look at the horizon or see the curve of the Earth from an airplane window, think about all those sailors, scholars, and dreamers who already knew, long before satellites and space travel, that we've been living on a beautiful, round planet all along. And if you enjoyed this journey through history and myth, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more myth-busting stories, and share this with a friend who still believes the Middle Ages were stuck on a flat Earth. Who knows, maybe you'll change someone's perspective today.